We'll move on to the deputations. So just so everyone's aware, the deputations are 5 minutes long, and that will include questions if you want to have any questions. So we're going to start, and the first four will be on the item around urban design review of medium and high density housing in Christchurch. And the first deputation is from Jocelyn Silcock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, councillors. My name is Jocelyn Silcock. I live in central Riccarton, which is classified as residential medium density. Walking around the area, it is depressing to see the newer dwellings have little private outdoor spaces. Landscaping is minimal. On some properties, a 20 to 30 centimetre strip running the length of the access way is the only garden area in a wide expanse of concrete or asphalt surrounding the front of the dwellings. In some places there are no plantings, only weeds growing. A metre and a half wide strip across the back of the dwelling is the only private space afforded. The artist's impression of the development usually shows very attractive plantings, even wide green areas, which unfortunately do not translate to reality. Residential medium density means one villa is replaced by 4 units with a total of 14 bedrooms. Owner-occupiers or tenants who take pride in maintaining their gardens are the exception, not the rule. 16 years ago, the character of central Riccarton meant there were front gardens and more trees. Admittedly, not all front gardens were as well maintained, with a flourishing floral display as the unit on the corner of Nelson Street and Picton Ave. Developers like to start with a clean slate, so every living plant is removed, especially large mature trees that have provided homes for the bird life. It took over a year for the bird population to return in our street when 3 mature trees, including a magnificent gum, were removed prior to the redevelopment. I'm sure an aerial view of Picton Ave private spaces 20 years ago would be in sharp contrast to the concrete and asphalt of today. Medium density definitely means a move from a garden suburb to minimalist plantings. I realise it's not possible in a residential medium density zone for every development to have a front garden or every dwelling. Good site planning must be possible to improve, as the report states a need for space allocated to front gardens and access way planting. I feel privileged to own a property that reflects the crime prevention through environmental design policy, where there is a transition from public space to our front door. It seems we have more private space in at the front of our townhouse than the individual units in the new complex on the corner of Deans Ave and Riccarton Ave will have. Many properties in central Riccarton do not seem to meet the requirements stated in section 14.5.2.2 of the city plan for 20% of the site for landscaping, of which 50% shall be trees and shrubs. Storage of recycling bins are an added problem to solve when space is limited. The site planning by the developer enabled us and our attached neighbours to also enjoy an enclosed yard off our lounge with, in our case, room for an apricot tree, a passion fruit vine, a Robina tree, as well as vegetables, ornamentals, and a safe haven for our 15-year-old Jack Russell. Although the residential medium density complex on the corner of Deans Ave and Riccarton Road is not within the central Riccarton area, they are part of the approach to the Riccarton shopping centre and sited opposite the fabulous Hagley Park. It is difficult to envisage how the completed development will complement the ideal of a 21st century garden we are proud to live in. There are so many units with doors that are a few steps from the footpath on Riccarton Road. There does not look to be space conducive to planting. I hope innovative landscaping design on this site will model how owners' tenants can achieve gardens that encourage involvement and inspire a design to maintain a sustainable, property enhancing environment. How can children be inspired to develop green fingers when many developments have very limited or no green space? Does close proximity to all the magnificent trees in Hagley Park mean trees are not required in the communal areas of our medium density environment? Communal tree requirements are identified as not being met in the report. With so little ground area included in site design, there is often not sufficient space between adjoining units or the large houses on the plan to allow for a canopy spread. It seemed that 2 saplings on a corner site near me must have been required as part of the planning consent process, as they disappeared on the back of the trailer after a month. Landscaping implies thought and design. The impression is that the least possible amount of design is the goal. The city plan sets expectations, but there seems no requirement to meet the expectations. The challenge for the council and council planning department is to lift the standard of landscaping from minimal to good quality design that enhances the environment and complements the garden city vision.
I'm sorry, Jocelyn, I'm going to have to stop you there because you've run out of time. And thank you, it's very clear actually what you were saying. And I guess for everyone that's doing deputations, I'm going to apologise now because I will have to be very strict on the 5-minute time limit because of the amount we do have today. But thank you very much. Helen Broughton.
Thank you. Good morning. I've come today to speak on residential medium zoning. I was first elected to the community board, and this zoning in Riccarton was in place. So it's been there for 25 years. It's largely on the south side of Riccarton Road, but also a section on the northern side between Deans Avenue and the railway line. So if you look on your map, it's clearly marked. Residents have been living with this for 25 years. It's not a good environment, and I think it's getting worse. So I support you completely in undertaking this study, and I ask you to move promptly to see if you could make changes to the district plan. One of the issues I've come across being on a resource management hearing, that we were advised there's 70 to 77 households in 1 hectare. In the district plan, and it was emphasised to the hearings panel in 2015, the staff thought there would be 30 households per hectare. In fact, I think there's 70 to 77, but if we take that aside and look at the actual report, it's 58. So whichever figure you take, 58 or 70, it's twice the size of what the planners projected at the time they formed the district plan. So, and I sat through the district plan hearings around this, and I very clearly recall them saying 30 households per hectare. Now that hasn't happened, but I think if you can look at that, I don't know how you actually control it, but it's going far beyond what was actually anticipated. Second point I'd like to make, this residential medium zone does not achieve the objective. 14.2.4 in the district plan states high quality, sustainable residential neighbourhoods which are well designed, have a high level of amenity, enhance local character and reflect the Ngāi Tahu heritage for Ototahi. So it doesn't meet any of those. And it's poor site layout, minimal outdoor space, getting smaller and smaller, visually no concern for the streetscape, and very few trees and sort of landscaping. There's also other effects which haven't, now those are touched on in your report. The other effects are there isn't enough parking, and that leads to parking on the berms and footpaths. So it looks very, very cluttered. The homes become tenancy rather than home ownership. And so it's fairly transient population. At one stage when I first was elected, it was seen as a third of people changed over within an election cycle, I would say now it's half. That's just a guess, but it was at one stage 33% moved within 3 years. The third point, older houses becoming tenanted as well, possibly young people and students, and look exceedingly run down. So the owner is buying them, renting them, and then putting them up for development. So I think in the plan you intended to have new housing at medium density levels, but you expected older housing as well. Well, the older housing looks very derelict. So it's not meeting what was thought, in fact, the plan. So I know that some of you won't be familiar with the effects of medium density, so I would ask you to have a walk around and have a look at what's happening on that south side of Riccarton Road. I know that the Mayor has done that, and I'd sort of ask others to do that. I had a list of recommendations. I'll hand this out, or what the staff can, but probably one of the first ones I'd ask you, that you convene a working group of residents' associations in these zones and possibly other parties to understand their concerns. What's really happening for the people who live in, fact, these zones? And you've got to 5 minutes. If you want to grab those. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The next deputation is from Greg Partridge. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, councillors and chair. Thank you for having us. My name is Greg Partridge. I live in a residential medium density zone in Richmond, and did my first deputation to a committee, the Regulatory Performance Committee, back in October 2018. It's now 21 months since November 2018 when an urgent request was made by council staff to investigate the operation of the district plan, and that request was made by the Regulatory Performance Committee. We are finally presented with the Urban Design Review, which clearly indicates the standard of residential developments are not achieving the high quality and amenity that the district plan sets out. The review doesn't indicate at what point senior urban designer David Hatton, the team leader city planning David Falconer were engaged, but it is disappointing that there's not been more urgency applied by them, General Manager Brendan Anstis, nor in fact the Regulatory Performance Committee for the review to be presented much sooner. I say that due to the fact that during those 21 months, an awfully large number of poorly designed developments were constructed, consented, and therefore have created poor outcomes for many residents and neighbourhoods across the city. How many more of these substandard developments that are failing to achieve high quality design and amenity are currently under construction? How many more will continue to be granted resource consents until such time as corrections to council staff's application of the district plan are addressed and in fact adopted? The review demonstrates no focus regarding developers clear felling established trees, nor the deforestation of the tree canopy as a result of poorly designed developments, yet the Christchurch City Council has a lengthy webpage dedicated to the benefits of trees. The webpage speaks to the environmental, economic and social benefits that large and established trees have in neighbourhoods, and I quote, "Trees enhance neighbourhood character and amenity. Trees contribute to the livability of Christchurch by naturalising built environments, softening harsh outlines of buildings, complementing building development and screening unsightly views." The webpage speaks to how urban intensification adds to urban heating and how trees counteract that. It speaks of how trees manage stormwater flows through their canopies and root systems. Urban intensification reduces the amount of land that is able to act as a natural filter of stormwater and pollutants due to the fact that land is smothered with impervious paving, buildings, paths, driveways, etc. If the council were to legislate for the retention of existing specimen and established trees It would reduce the stormwater runoff, would vastly improve the amenity of developments, and would also address the issue of over-intensification. In May of 2019, this council declared a climate emergency, and in the council's strategic framework document, meeting the challenge of climate change through every means available is one of the strategic priorities that is listed. Why then are established trees and residential developments being ignored when they are an important part of not only the amenity equation, but also an incredibly valuable environmental asset? Do we want Christchurch to become a concrete jungle or an urban forest? The resource consent applications for all of these substandard developments were evaluated by council staff. They should all have been assessed under the rules and guidelines in the District Plan and Resource Management Act. None of them should have been permitted to be constructed when they failed to achieve the high quality design and amenity standards. Certain developers in Christchurch market themselves as being committed to innovation and design, environmental responsibility, and building the most livable city. But talk is cheap. If developers are submitting plans that are not achieving those high quality standards, they should not be rubber stamped by council staff with a green light to proceed until such time as they actually do.
Thank you. You've left time for questions too. Is there any questions, Greg? Tim?
Can I have a copy of your submission, your speech? Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
You mentioned about pervious concrete, didn't you? Well, yeah, there are sometimes developments that go ahead that have driveways that don't even have concrete at all, but instead gravel. But sometimes, which is very good in terms of soaking up water, but often residents who live nearby don't like it because they're worried about weeds growing and things like that. So it's just a comment really, but have you got any thoughts on that?
If you have the gravel deep enough and weed matting under it, you won't have weeds growing in it. And if owners are responsible owners, they will actually take pride in their property and actually pull the weeds or spray the weeds.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg, for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Colin Stokes.
Kia ora all. I've been designing housing in Christchurch for 40 years, back to the time when we had half a dozen district plans throughout Christchurch. I participated in the replacement district plan hearing, submitted to that, and was very much party to all of the residential discussion we're having now about the medium density zone. What you're being told, the councillors and the public have been told, that there's no density standards for medium density zones, is not only an oxymoron and contrary to the objectives and policies of the district plan, it's factually wrong. Rule 14.13.1.3 Housing Yield Qualifying Standards. Comprehensive development of a site shall deliver a minimum density of 30 households per hectare, 1 unit per 330 metres squared, and a maximum density of 65 households per hectare, 1 per 150 metres squared. Now, Rule 14.13.2.5 determines that anything above that 65 units per hectare is a non-complying activity. So there are rules in the district plan. What you've been told, you're being hoodwinked. Developers and council staff are not adhering to the district plan. These rules are clear. And as other speakers have said, if you look to the policies and objectives of the district plan, it's very clear. Medium density is for medium density character, etc. Now, these rules here are in relation to enhanced development mechanism, which is the district plan recognises that if you've got a larger site and it's close to schools, 4,000 square metre outdoor living area, parks, etc., supermarkets, etc., if they're close in there, close to schools, close to public transport, then they can have an enhanced mechanism where they can have an increased density over to what's generally allowed by the district plan, and that's up to 65 units per hectare. Now, even at 65 per hectare, and what's being approved is up to 100 units per hectare. And council staff and the public have been told this has to be allowed as of right. Well, it's nonsense. Even at 65 units per hectare, it's still a discretionary activity. So the council has the discretion whether they approve these developments or not. And with that higher density up to 65 per hectare, there's development standards that require high development standards. So there's increased about what's required as far as outdoor living areas and their service areas, etc. They all have to be complied with in addition. Well, not only is council staff allowing up to 100 units per hectare, they're also allowing them to breach these other critical standards, front yard standards. The one in Perth Street is about 2 metres closer to the road frontage than what's actually allowed. So what I'm telling you is that you don't need to address your district plan and go back to square one or go to the government to get it changed. You just need to interpret the district plan as it was met. So you don't have to go back to square one. You just need to sit down with your staff, look at these rules I'm telling you about, and look at what the district plan anticipated. Now, the hearings panel addressed council staff at this during the replacement hearing panel hearings. And they specifically mentioned, do we need to put in a per hectare requirement for units in the medium density zone? And staff assured them, no, you don't, because we've got these other standards in here that require specific upscaled design. And further, there's also this enhanced development standard that says 65 per hectare is the maximum, above which is non-compliant. Now, the district plan has to be read as a whole, which includes that. So when you're looking at medium density, you've got to look at the district plan as a whole, including these rules I've read out. If 65 per hectare is non-complying for an ideal site, close to schools, etc., it must be non-complying for any site. So I'll take questions if you like. Thank you very much. Kia ora.
Okay, we'll now